What's up, everybody, and welcome back inside to yet another installment of Open Run presented to you by War Media. I'm your host, Gabriel Wilkins, and as always, I'm joined beside my co-host, Josh Hicks, to talk on the latest news surrounding the basketball landscape. As we are recording this just 4 days away from the free agency frenzy, which is set to begin at 6 p.m. Eastern Time at the end of this week on Friday, just prior to the start of a new month in July. The NBA draft is officially complete and the offseason is in full swing already, as we know. How's everything going, my man?
Busy but good, brother. Always nice to be on the mic with you. Ready to get this thing rolling.
For sure, let's do it. In this week's edition of Open Run, me and Josh will discuss the latest blockbuster trade to take place across the association that transpired on the eve of the NBA draft and features an all-star guard who is set to be going back to Cali, in addition to sharing our thoughts on the teams that came out as the biggest winners and losers this year on draft night and so much more. But before we do any of that, let's take a moment to give kudos to the top ballers who earned some exclusive honors over the last several days, as we always do, to tip things off here on Open Run with our hoop shout out segment. Special hoop shout outs go out to Breonna Stewart of the New York Liberty and Asia Wilson of the Las Vegas Aces, who were both named starters in this year's WNBA All-Star Game for the 5th time in their respective careers, and will also serve as official team captains, as the two stars garnered the most fan votes among all players selected for the festivities, which are set to take place next month on July 15th out in Las Vegas. The number one overall pick in this year's WNBA draft, Aaliyah Boston of the Indiana Fever, will also join Stewart and Wilson as an all-star starter in the front court to mark her first ever appearance in the game and be joined beside 9-time all-star Brittany Griner of the Phoenix Mercury, former MVP and 8-time all-star Nneka Ogwumike of the Los Angeles Sparks, and 2-time all-star Satu Sabali of the Dallas Wings, while the starting backcourt will feature two of Wilson's teammates on the Aces in Chelsea Gray and Jackie Young, alongside Illinois' own and now's native Jewel Lloyd from the Seattle Storm and Dallas's Arike Ogunbowale, including another WNBA player who could very well find her way out in Vegas within the coming weeks, making her 4th appearance in the All-Star game, by the name of Alyssa Thomas from the Connecticut Sun, who notched the 4th triple-double outing of her career and set a new WNBA record in the process, as the 10-year vet out of Maryland dropped 13 points on the way to hauling down 15 rebounds and dishing out 12 assists to guide the Sun to a 96-72 victory against the Sky to close out the weekend in Connecticut, marking her 2nd triple-double in the last 5 days. So after taking a brief moment to highlight some of the accomplishments of the game's top stars in the WNBA, what are some storylines across the game as a whole that have stood out to you, Josh, the most over the last week since the last time we talked on matters on and off the hardwood?
I got two for you, man. The first one is Jordan Hawkins, the UConn standout that got drafted to the Pelicans. Mainly because, not just because of the fact that he's a shooter and he gives New Orleans another option from a sniper perspective and creating his own shot perspective that they need, but also because he gets to play in the same stadium area as his cousin Angel Reese, who won the championship this past season with LSU, along with him at UConn. So it's a family affair, and they're taking over the state of Louisiana right now, with Angel Reese doing her thing at LSU, and now Jordan Hawkins joining the hype with Zion Williamson and the New Orleans Pelicans over there. It's a special thing to see, and this whole summer when you talk about drafting and the NBA draft, etc., has always been some type of family ties. When you talk about teams and other players and everything with the respective teams that they're going to. So it's a pretty special moment to see, and it's always great to play in front of family when you can. So I'm happy for Jordan Hawkins and the fact that he gets to play in the same state as his sister. Most likely have a chance to go to her games, especially with LSU having a monster roster makeover that they're gonna be a powerhouse with this year in women's college basketball. It's a great thing to see. And the other one is the Connecticut Suns' DeWanna Bonner moves into the 9th spot of all-time scoring, passing Katie Smith. She's right behind Candace Parker, but not by much. But the fact that she's top 10 in scoring, a solid veteran player who, last year got a chance to go to her first WNBA finals. I mean, it's a special thing to see, and being up close and watching her play for some time. She's not just a beast. She gets credit on the court, but she's a beast defensively. And to be able to be such a great all-around player that can rebound, that can play great defense and help on the interior paint, but also versatility-wise around the perimeter, having the scoring options and the scoring game that she has is just another icing on the cake for her. But it's a testament to how great of a player she is, not just offensively, but defensively as well. So shout out to DeWanna Bonner for what she's doing in the WNBA, moving up to the top 10 scoring list and being number 9 currently right now and going as she continues to play out the remainder of her career at the WNBA, man. Much props to her.
Oh, for sure, man. And she's been getting it done for a long time. I remember DeWanna Bonner very well out in Phoenix. And you talking about a woman that won 2 WNBA championships with the Mercury and got to her first finals, as you alluded to, with the Connecticut Sun last year. To be able to do it at a high level at the age of 35 is a testament to her ability, man. And she's looking like she's going to be on pace to make it to the All-Star game for the 5th time in her career, beside Alyssa Thomas, who I was shouting out early on in the show, who's really been playing some incredible basketball on a Suns team that I don't think anybody saw coming under Stephanie Wright, who has the 2nd best record, only behind the Aces in the WNBA. And for a team that was in transition, having a new coach and Stephanie White take over for Kurt Miller, who's now in Los Angeles, and then losing one of the game's top players in Jonquel Jones to the New York Liberty, they clicking on all cylinders. And I think the Liberty might have a challenge on their hand when it comes to getting to the finals. We thought it might be the Washington Mystics, and it still could be. But this Connecticut Sun team is something to watch. But for me, the one thing that stood out to me this week was, you talk about the NBA draft and Jordan Hawkins, but the top 10 NBA draft picks, all Black players, happen to have something in common that hasn't been discussed a lot nationally. And I'm a bit frustrated by that. And I'm a bit surprised that I haven't seen major outlets cover this. They all represented by Black agents. And I just want to give a shout out to Buna Ndaye of ComSport, Wilmer Jackson of SAI Sports Management, Parlay Sports and Entertainment, Troy Thompson of GAPP Sports Group, Bill Duffy, longtime agent at William Morris Endeavor Sports, Joe Branch, Raymond Brothers of I Am Sports and Entertainment, and Marcus Monk. These guys happen to represent Victor Wembanyama and Bilal Coulibaly, Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, Amen and Asar Thompson, Anthony Black, Jarris Walker, Taylor Hendricks, and Kaysen Wallace. You may be wondering, why am I making a big deal about this? It's because all these guys are in the top 10 when it comes to them being selected in the NBA draft. And it's not every day that you see all top 10 selections represented by Black agents. And not only are these guys represented by Black agents, but they're represented by guys that don't go by the name of Rich Paul at Clutch Sports. And this isn't a diss on Rich Paul at Clutch Sports, who's a hell of an agent, who through his connections and ties with LeBron James was able to get his foot in the door, and he took advantage of it. Kudos and salute to him. But these guys have been around for a long time, such as Raymond Brothers and Bill Duffy. And you don't really hear much about them. Matter of fact, they've been around in the game longer than Rich Paul has. And most of the time, these are guys that make things go behind the scenes that don't get a lot of credit. And for young Black athletes coming into the league, a league in which is 3/4 Black, as far as the player demographic, making the decision to hire a Black agent when so many go in a different direction. No disrespect to them, if you know, if for career management, it's just a great thing to see. And I think what it shows, or it should show, the next generation of kids coming up and teenagers that are into the game and love the game, that it's another way to make money in it. And you don't always have to necessarily be a player or a coach to do it. You can work in a front office. You can work for an agency, starting out and become an agent, learning the business, taking it up in school or whatever and so forth like that. So I just want to give kudos to those guys, especially in the wake of what's transpired with the Charlotte Hornets, where you have Michael Jordan, who was the lone Black majority owner in the NBA, sell the majority of his franchise away and is now stepped down into a minority ownership seat in Charlotte.
Well said, Gabe. As always, man. This is what journalism's all about, man. Being able to highlight the realities that aren't being discussed. And this is obviously a big deal, because when you talk about a league that is 80% Black from a player's perspective, you know, to have Black representation for these young guys being successful in the top, like I said, in moments like this, is very special to see and well deserving of it. Those agents deserve their shine. Those businesses deserve their shine, and it's a testament to, you know, other brands that have been taken over in such a way, especially you talk about from agents turned into general managers or turned into president of operations, things that where they're actually running teams. Like, that could be another pathway for agents that represent these players down the line that are brothers. And that's something that, you know, obviously isn't always represented from that pathway perspective for us Black people, but it can now, because the path's already been set. And we just have to take advantage of that process moving forward. And what great way to do it than to represent the best of the best that came out of this class, or each class each year, and build with those classes each year to get to their level of success, their level of you know, achievements. That's a heck of a way to do it. And this is just more and more of a beautiful thing to see within our people. And it deserves, and it should have been highlighted, but it really deserves to be highlighted. And of course, I'm glad it's you that's the one that's highlighted it the most right now.
Oh, well, I can't just say it's me. You know, it's guys like on Twitter, like Cuffs the Legend, who actually brought it to my attention with his tweet talking about it. And it was one of the first things I saw on Saturday morning. I was like, wow, you know, and I'm familiar with Bouna Ndiaye, who represents a lot of French-born NBA players such as Rudy Gobert, and of course, the #1 overall pick, Victor Wembanyama, and the #7 overall pick, and Bilal Coulibaly, who was selected #7 overall by the Washington Wizards. You know, I was familiar with him. I was also familiar with Raymond Brothers and Bill Duffy, but to see, you know, some names that I wasn't familiar with, such as Marcus Monk of Excel Sports, who represents Case and Wallace out of Kentucky, who went #10 overall to Oklahoma City, and to see the name of Wilmer Jackson of SAI Sports Management, who represents Brandon Miller, who went #2 overall to the Hornets. You know, that's cool, because I wasn't familiar with a lot of these guys, but now I feel the need to pay more attention to them because of seeing this story come to light. And I hope that other people find out about it sooner rather than later, even though it's a story that hasn't been widely covered, but deserves coverage.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
Well, I'm gonna move on and get right to it, and talking about a big time trade that happened actually on the eve of the 2023 NBA draft between the Washington Wizards and the Golden State Warriors, involving Chris Paul and Jordan Poole. Golden State is receiving the rights to Chris Paul, while Washington receives the rights to Jordan Poole, Ryan Rollins, a 2030 protected first round draft pick, top 20 protected per reports, and a 2027 second round draft pick. Chris Haynes of Bleacher Report has reported that the Warriors will not look to waive Chris Paul and anticipate having a 12-time All-Star team up with Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green out in the Bay Area. You know, last week, Josh, we was talking about the Bradley Beal trade, which involved Chris Paul going from Phoenix to Washington, and how Washington was working with Chris Paul to either try and find a trade destination for him, or if they weren't able to do that, allowing him to receive a buyout. And we talked about markets that would fit him in an event that he would be bought out. Well, now we see that that's not the case. He's going to Golden State. What's your thoughts on this move starting out with the Warriors?
It was kind of shocking. I didn't expect Chris Paul to go to a team where he pretty much hated for half of his career. You talk about, his incidents going back and forth with Steph, that fake laugh that he gives Steve Kerr. Like you just didn't. I just didn't expect that. But I will say, if Chris Paul is smart, this might be an ideal situation for him, and this is why. You have a reliable person to play next to in Steph Curry. You have one of the game's greatest shooters outside of Steph Curry on the other wing in Klay Thompson. And you have Draymond Green, who's great at pick and roll situations. And with Kevin Looney, Lob City's kind of decent. So if you want to do pick and roll with Kevin Looney, he doesn't need the ball all the time like a DeAndre Ayton would. And, so you can still do your thing, but if you want to assist it, throw a lob to it, Kevin Looney can get it. If you want to score, Kevin Looney can rebound and keep your offense going. But I don't expect Chris Paul to start. I actually expect him to come off the bench. And if he's smart, he will be willingly to say yes. Because you need him not just for the season, you need him for the playoffs. And the past few years, ever since he even got to Phoenix, he has failed to play a full postseason in moments when they need him the most. And coming up the bench, knowing that your point guard / two guard and Steph Curry is so reliable and durable and can keep your offense afloat, you don't have to do much. You just come off the bench, you play solid minutes. You can be a reckoning force defensively, which we know when you have and you're not injured, you can be that. You bring toughness to the squad, which can relate to Draymond Green in ways that Jordan Poole couldn't. And on top of that, even when you need to step in and play, you could put Steph at the 2 now and slide Klay to the 3, which for defenders can be a nightmare because Steph is a magician when you talk about moving without the ball. And on top of that, you're preserving Steph Curry in your own way if you was to put them two in the same backcourt together, because he doesn't have to dribble all the time. You're actually preserving Steph Curry too. So if they play this right, and Chris Paul is willing to come off the bench and play limited minutes, now knowing that down the line he could start and play majority minutes depending on the injury situation of the team, or preserve himself so that way when it matters do really matter the most moving forward, especially in the postseason, he could be available. He could play his best basketball, knowing that if he does that with the championship level caliber team in the Warriors, there's always going to be a chance for you to go to the finals when you have Steph Curry, Draymond, and Klay Thompson. And for him to be part of that mix now, it gives the Warriors an option that they may not have had in a long time from a point guard perspective, but it also gives Chris Paul options to where he doesn't have to do the most and he doesn't have to play all the minutes. He can come off the bench and preserve himself so he could play throughout the postseason and give himself that much better of a chance to win a championship.
I'm glad when you discuss CP3 that you discussed the fact that in order for this to work, he's going to have to come off the bench, because that's the only way that I see this working, to be honest with you. This is the only way I see it working. I don't mind the move for 2 reasons from Golden State side. As talented as Jordan Poole is as a scorer, The reason why his playing time was so up and down during the playoffs was due to his struggles defensively and his offense being inconsistent at times. And when his shot wasn't falling, it wasn't as if he was using his ability to create for others at a high volume. And that's what made it so problematic. With Chris Paul, you get the opposite. Like you said, he can go in a role as a 6-man off the bench. And I think him and Kevon Looney in a 2-man game in a pick and roll could actually be kind of nice. And I'm anxious to see that. And even though it is a very weird to see him on a Warriors squad with Steve Kerr as the head coach, the fact that he can take care of the rock like we know him to do and set other people up offensively, yeah, it's going to take a huge load off of Steph. And I think it's a much needed load that needs to be taken off of Steph, especially as he's starting to enter the mid-30s phase of his career. Even though Chris Paul is older, coming off the bench, I think could actually help extend his career if he's willing to do it. It's a low risk, high reward move for Golden State. And one plus I will say is that if it doesn't work out, they can easily cut bait with him next summer.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could use his deal in another trade by the deadline if needed, thanks to his contract being structured the way it is, because he's currently on the second to last year of his deal. And I believe the last year of his deal is non-guaranteed. And that's why I always had an antenna up when Kevin Durant went to Phoenix. And I kept saying on this show, look, after the year, expect Chris Paul to get traded because of the way his contract is structured. But now that he's in Golden State, I'm curious to see how it works. I don't think they can work together in a starting rotation because they're too small. The next move, though, I feel that Mike Dunleavy needs to make is acquiring a big man.
Mm-hmm.
We just saw a trade go down hours prior to us recording that we're going to get into in a little bit, involving a team in the Western Conference, even though it's a young and up-and-coming team that's going to have a very long front court. Other teams that are among the top of the top in the West, such as Memphis when they're healthy, Denver when they're healthy, Los Angeles, the Lakers, they have big front lines. If they don't rectify or acquire a center that can rebound, set good screens, and protect the rim, run the floor, and be an asset in the pick and roll game, not only besides CP3 in the second unit in minutes that they play with him, but Steph, I think they're gonna run into a lot of trouble. So I like it, but they still got business to take care of. Plus, they got to re-sign Draymond Green too. Even though it's been reported that he's not seeking to leave Golden State per se, they still got to take care of him. And this team right now, it's obvious what they're trying to do. They're trying to save money, and they still trying to compete. But I'm curious as to whether or not this is going to have some ramifications down the line. We know that Draymond Green and Jordan Poole didn't get along based off of what transpired after training camp with Draymond punching Jordan Poole in the face. We know that Draymond Green hasn't hid it at all, that he really don't care for Chris Paul much at all. Now that those two are teammates, I'm interested to see how that dynamic is going to work. I know ball is ball. I know they'll figure out a way to work as far as X's and O's are concerned, but I'm not ready to just anoint Golden State as like the top team in the West because of this move. I still got to see more from them, but I understand the move. It's a calculated gamble and a risk. Will it pay off? It remains to be seen. I don't know.
No, those are very good points, especially when you talk about the relationship between Chris Paul and Draymond Green. I do believe that they'll work that out for sure. But it's interesting because I believe this is the first time, really the first time, and we talk about Chris Paul going to a situation where he's not viewed as the ultimate leader. This is still Steph Curry's team. This is still Draymond's voice being heard in that locker room. So he's not going to have the top voice anymore. So how is he going to adjust to that, knowing that when you're in timeouts, it's going to be Draymond and Steph talking the most? Now, we know that Steph isn't the most vocal person, but when he speaks, the brother speaks. People listen. Draymond Green has always been the most vocal guy. You add in Chris Paul to the mix, who's always known for that too. I think that's why if he comes on the bench, it could be easier to work with because he could be one of the main vocal leaders on the bench as well as that second unit. Players respect that and he'll still get his points across. But it's different when you talking about having both of them in the backcourt like that. We talk about Chris Paul and Steph Curry and knowing that your front line is Draymond and y'all gotta communicate in that way too. I think it'll be easier for them to work with because it's not going to have a Jordan Poole lingering effect, but it's going to be interesting to see how Chris Paul adjusts because he's not going to be the main voice on this team anymore. And that's something that he's never really had to deal with.
Yeah, and then not only is it going to be tough for him to adjust to the fact that he's not going to be one of the main voices in that locker room, he's going to have to get adjusted to coming off the bench if that's what Steve Kerr asked him to do on the first day of camp. Chris Paul has never came off the bench before in his career. That I can recall.
Right.
And Russell Westbrook had to get adjusted to that. And we saw how that was tough for him with the Lakers prior to, everything that happened with him getting traded to Utah, followed by the buyout, which led them going to the Clippers, is he's now approaching free agency or getting set to in the next several days. But he's going to have to get adjusted to that. And when you a guy who's accomplished everything in the game outside of winning the NBA MVP and the NBA championship like Chris Paul has, you really got to check your ego at the door at this point. And not only are you going to a team where you're not the main voice and you got to sacrifice your role, but you going and you playing with a team of guys that's actually been there and done that. They got multiple championships.
Yeah.
And they not afraid to let that be known. You see Clay talking about it hey, I got 4 of them things. Draymond talk about hey, I got 4 of them. Stuff yeah, I got 4 of them. This is what we do over here. So he's really walking into an interesting situation. And even though he's back in California, he's with a franchise that has set the gold standard for what it's like to win today in the modern day NBA. But I want to move on real quick and ask you what you think about this from Washington side. Now we know that they're seeking to play the NBA draft lottery sweepstakes, but at the same time, you're getting Jordan Poole and you're getting a first round pick in 2030 that's top 20 protected, which I'm not sure if that bodes well for them because we don't even know where the Warriors may be in 2030. Mm-hmm. They might be bad enough to where that top 20 protection pays off for them in their favor. I mean, Jordan Poole, I'm not trying to knock Jordan Poole as a player at all. I think he's going to have a green light in Washington, but I don't understand why you're trying to take on a long-term salary like Jordan Poole's after you just got rid of Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis, because not only because of their salary, but because you sought to pivot in a different direction, which is basically rebuilding for the future.
It's different if you're just rebuilding, or you're rebuilding with the expectation that a young player can turn into a star. And I think that's what they're going for with Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole, yeah, he's going to have the green light. It's going to be Poole City in DC. Come to all the pools you can come to, because he's about to pull from everywhere. I would not be surprised.
Especially if Kyle Kuzma not there.
Oh, yeah, especially. So don't be surprised if he come up there dropping 20, 25 a game on 40 shots, okay? Don't be surprised if that happens. But I think what they see in Jordan Poole is because of the fact that he came from a Warriors culture as an NBA champion. Maybe some of that can rub off and he could still be the main guy in DC, and we'll just add to him. Which, if you want to be considering the fact that you really did just dump everything from a salary perspective and you took on his deal, which and down the line is not going to be as expensive as it was when he once signed it. Yeah, for them, it can be viewed as a low risk, high reward. But the reality is, you have a lot of draft picks from the previous trades that you've done but it's not going to expedite your process. You're really looking at a trust the process type of scenario. And that trust the process scenario, we saw how long it took for that process to take place over in Philadelphia. Is Washington willing to wait that long for that to happen when you got a young guy like Jordan Poole on your roster? I don't know. That it does scream, where are we going with this? But I understand some of it with Jordan Poole, but after that, it's like, okay, this is it. You're really putting the hands of the franchise in Jordan Poole. And since you had John Wall and Bradley Beal for over a decade, I don't know if you want to do that. I just don't know. Yeah, he's an NBA champion, but look where he was from that point to where he is now. You said it earlier, inconsistent. And you have to, and for that to build, you need to put him in the right environment for that to grow. I don't think Washington is going to be a place where you're going to see that, because they're still rebuilding themselves. So I don't know. It's a very interesting move that really, for me, benefited in the Warriors' favor more than the Wizards, for sure. But it's a calculated move on their part that you still have to question, even though it has potential to succeed, is it really the best route to go? And I'm very unsure about that.
Yeah, you have to question it, especially when you looking at the salary as I have it here. Next season, Jordan Poole is projected to make $27.9 million according to Hoops Hype. Then he's projected to make $30.1 million in 24-25, $32.3 million in 25-26. And in 26-27, he's projected to make 34.5. So if this is the guy that you believe is going to help you usher in the next era of Wizards basketball, you better make damn sure that you are certain that he's indeed your guy, because that's going to be a hard deal to move if he doesn't perform up to par through the first year and a half of his tenure with the Washington Wizards. And I hope that they have a team that's somewhat semi-competitive as they seek to play around and maneuver with various pieces on their roster. Like, this roster is very guard heavy right now. After all the moves and willing and dealing that they've done, they are very guard heavy right now. Like, they got Tyus Jones over there, man.
Yeah.
And even though you can run Jordan Poole at the 2, you talking about a relatively small backcourt. And yeah, I understand that they seeking to play for bigger and better days. This is a team that likely going to be in the top 5 of the draft lottery next season. But like, I understand you traded mostly to get draft picks, but the draft picks that you got, like, are more than likely going to be in the back third of the draft if they convey.
Right.
And that's if they, if they convey, you basically saying that you expect for Golden State to still be winning in the next 7 years, no matter who's on their roster. That's a huge gamble. And then the other pick that you got was a 2027 second round pick. And not trying to knock second round picks, because, we've seen some talent fall in the second round. The finals MVP was a second round selection. So, in Nikola Jokic, but I don't know. I don't know about that type of gamble from Washington. I got to see it. Jordan Poole is a 20-plus point per game scorer when he's cooking. And yeah, he started in 43 out of 82 games last year for Golden State. But I'm really going to keep a close eye on him, because he's been gifted a key to that franchise. And he's going to have opportunity to show and prove. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not this gamble pays off for the Wizards. But I do agree with you when you say Golden State is really the winner of the trade. Yeah, of course they're the winner of the trade, because they got the best player in the deal. But I want to move on and talk about another deal that happened at the top of this week with the Utah Jazz acquiring a guy that's been on the trade block for a long time and has finally gotten traded. And that's John Collins, who Utah received from Atlanta in exchange for Rudy Gay and a future second round draft pick. This trade allows Atlanta to drop well below the 182.5 million luxury tax apron level, and it also allows them to get under the 165 million luxury tax threshold for next year. Also, unless they look to use a $23.5 million trade exception, which they generated from this deal to take on another player, is Collins is owed $78 million over the next 3 years. Now, last year, Collins averaged 13.1 points per game. That marked his lowest output of his career since his rookie year with the Hawks out of Wake Forest. He also shot a career worst 29.2% from three-point land. And he also finished his final season in Atlanta with a career low 6.5 rebounds and 1.2 assists per game this past season, despite playing his usual 30 minutes a night. This trade got me thinking. And I got to ask you this question, Josh. Do you believe that John Collins can find a resurgence out in Salt Lake City, similar to the manner that his new front court mate and Lauri Markkanen did last year after he found himself dealt away to the Jazz late last summer, going from a complimentary piece in Cleveland and a guy who wasn't able to make things work here in Chicago for various reasons to an all-star en route to winning most improved honors last year? Do you think John Collins can find that type of resurgence with the Utah Jazz?
No, I don't. The reason why I don't is because you already got a crazy backcourt over a front court over there with Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen. They're gonna steal all the shine anyways. But Lauri Markkanen's skill set is different from John Collins. Lauri Markkanen is a better shooter. He's a better when you talk about pick and pop option. He's also developed a post game that's a pretty nice package to go along with that as well. John Collins, to me, one of the only few advantages that he does have over Lauri Markkanen is his athleticism and rebounding per se. But when you talk about the Utah Jazz's offense and the way they move the ball and how it flows, I don't know if John Collins has the offensive skill set to match what they do, especially in comparison to Lauri Markkanen. I don't think it fits. The only way it really fits is if maybe he's the five position, that center position, and you can use athleticism from a paint perspective, especially defensively. But his skill set is so, I hate to use the term, but it's so average that at the end of the day, it doesn't stand out to when you compare it to a guy like a Lauri Markkanen, who pretty much created a role that was top tier beneficial that he could have had elsewhere. It was a perfect environment for him to thrive in because of the pieces that were there and the offense that was there that made him a focal point. Utah's not going to make John Collins a focal point of their offense. It's just not going to happen. And because of that, I don't think he will thrive as much. You may get similar aspects. Unless Utah is not done wheeling and dealing. But at the end of the day, I just don't see him thriving in a way that, especially not in the way Lauri Markkanen has been thriving, but I think he could do a little better, but just not to that type of extent.
This is an interesting trade to me. Danny Ainge, man, I don't know how he keep doing it. Like, he didn't even have to give up much at all to get John Collins. It's obvious what the Hawks were doing. They trying to save money.
Mm-hmm.
The Hawks are not only trying to save money, they trying to save money for a reason. And that reason is due to the fact that they're trying to find an off-ball threat to play beside DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. And John Collins was getting in the way. But I thought that Atlanta could have did better than what they got in return for John Collins. But Utah, I can't get mad at this one because they taking a gamble and they can afford to because they have a great deal of talent already there. You talk about Walker Kessler, who I think is a future all defensive first team selection. I'm going to just say it. He was all rookie first team this past year. I'm real high on him. I thought the Bulls should have took a look at him last year prior to the draft when he was coming out of Auburn. They also have Abaji on the wing, a sharpshooter who out of Kansas won a national championship with Christian Braun. Didn't get too much run this year consistently, but I think he's on the way. And then you still have Jordan Clarkson, who is yet to decline his player option officially and into the free agency market, but you still have him. You got a lot of talent. And I think defensively, though, this is going to be intriguing to watch because they got a real long front court. And they were already one of the top defenses last season, despite losing Rudy Gobert in that blockbuster deal with the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I can't knock it from their perspective because they got a bunch of draft picks from the Donovan Mitchell and the Rudy Gobert trades. They got cap space. They just gambling. I don't see him finding the resurgence that Lauri Markkanen did myself. But if they could help him develop into a better shooter, and with his athleticism, depending on who plays the point guard, utilize him well in the pick and roll game, he might be able to find a mini resurgence to where he at least looks like a serviceable player within their rotation and a guy that they can have some success with. But yeah, he won't be the main option there. And I think that's something that may have to be explained to him by Danny Ainge and Will Hardy and the rest of that front office out in Salt Lake City. But I do like the trade because it's showing that while they're patient, that they trying to do what it takes to at least cement themselves in that play-in picture, if not that 6th to 5th seed range in the West next year, which you never know because, you know, one thing about the West, it fluctuates a lot. And a lot of it is dependent on who stay healthy and who come ready to play throughout the course of an 82-game regular season. But, man, they're going to be long. And then they got Taylor Hendricks, too, who got a 7-foot wingspan. Like, defensively, I'm more so intrigued by this trade than offense for Utah.
Most definitely. And I think it's also intriguing for Utah because we got to be mindful of the fact that last year, starting off the season, Utah was top 2 in the West. They came out blazing.
Yeah.
Like, so they have talent enough to where they could compete. Adding John Collins to the mix from a talent perspective is really just adding another layer to the cake. But how they utilize him, to me, is just going to be a lot of question marks. And hopefully they know how to utilize him where he can thrive in the situation. But Utah ain't no, even though they are a team that's quote unquote rebuilding, they are still a team that's very competitive. And you can't take nights on the team like that because they've proven that when we get the ball rolling, they can roll. So it'll be interesting to see how they mesh and put all this together in comparison to the rest of the league.
Before we move on to the next topic, since we're talking about, you know, this Hawks and Jazz trade, we know why Atlanta made this trade. It's obvious that they want a guy that could play off the ball beside their 2 lead guards, all-star guards, might I add. There's been some reports that they're seeking to extend Onyeka Okongwu and Sadiq Bey, and that they could be looking to shop DeAndre Hunter in the coming days or weeks. Which off-ball threat do you personally believe could be serviceable for Atlanta as they seek to get back to the stage in which they were a couple years ago, if not more, in the Eastern Conference Finals?
I know, obviously, we heard reports about how they're really going heavy after Pascal Siakam, but and I think honestly he'll be like a really good fit.
Me too. I agree there.
But if not Pascal Siakam, why not go for his teammate? AG Anunoby?
OG Anunoby, yeah.
OG Anunoby? Yeah. Why not go after him? Because he is a heck of an off-ball defender, very strong 3-and-D guy, and he doesn't require the ball all the time. At least with Pascal, you know what he brings to the table, so you're going to have to sacrifice something for him to put up the numbers that he needs and to score in the way that we know he can score. But OG, you don't have to. he can be a spot up 3-point shooter and knock it down consistently. He can be a primary defender that you don't have to worry about, and you know you can still get contributions on the offensive end. He can guard your best player, put that load off for DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, and putting him in a backcourt with DeJounte Murray defensively. Woo, that's gonna be very nasty and scary to play against every night. And it hides Trae defensively. It doesn't expose Trae, which is something that Atlanta struggled with, because when you put Trae on an island, it's not the best situation. So if you can't get Pascal Siakam, you might as well go for the teammate, because they both fill voids that they need. But when you talk about offensively, it may be a better fit with OG because he doesn't require the ball so much.
Yeah, I wouldn't knock that. I would be curious to see how that fit work, especially when you already have AJ Griffin over there in Duke, who from Duke, who you expecting to be your 3-and-D wing long term, and a guy that I think played well and was a key contributor off the bench for Atlanta. But it all remains to be seen there how they play things out, because there's been some talks that they might trade Clint Capella as well, but we have to stay tuned on that one. But I want to move on to the NBA draft. Top 3 picks in the 2023 NBA draft. They went as I think most of us expected them to. Victor Wembanyama goes to the San Antonio Spurs. Brandon Miller is now a member of the Charlotte Hornets. Scoot Henderson, for the time being, is now Portland Trailblazer. The Thompson twins and Amin and Asar go back-to-back, getting selected number 4 and number 5 to the Rockets and Pistons, respectively. Magic took Anthony Black at number 6. Thunder moved up 2 spots in a draft night trade with the Mavericks for the number 10 overall pick to select Kentucky guard Cason Wallace, going so far as to even take on Davis Bertans' contract to get him. And then Cam Whitmore out of Villanova fell all the way to the Houston Rockets with the number 20 of selection on draft night. In your eyes, based off of what you saw transpire this year in Brooklyn at the draft, who would you say are the winners and losers from last Thursday night?
I mean, the winners and losers, the winners per se, for sure, the top 3, obviously. With, the Spurs, Hornets, Trailblazers. They got franchise caliber players that secures their future. And you really can't go wrong with either option. So it did, those teams won for sure. But to me, that really stood out the most is the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks did a very good job with their selections, getting the big man from Duke. And
Lively.
Yeah. And then you make a bold trade to get Bertans' contract off to Oklahoma City, and you draft they made a trade with Sacramento. Yeah.
They got Rashawn Holmes, and they added the 24th overall pick, which they used to draft Olivier Maxence Prosper out of Marquette. A guy that I could really see fitting in Dallas, trying to take that Dorian Finney-Smith role.
Yeah.
In the years to come. And a guy that's very long, athletic, can defend. You ball with your cousin, Cam Jones.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm happy for him. I'm definitely very happy for him. And he, like you said, he fits very well with that. And if you want to be real technical, because of the fact you got a Rashawn Holmes there, you can start to question now the next moves of how you're going to even handle Tim Hardaway Jr. with his contract. He can plug in that realm too, because he does a lot of the similar things that Tim Hardaway Jr. can do. Tim Hardaway Jr. right now is a better scorer/shooter, but Prosper can grow into that. And he's shown he can grow into that because his draft stock flew so much. He went from being looked at as a potential second rounder to being drafted in the first round because of this. So this was a bold move for Dallas to make, but it was such a nice move to have. It's a safe move to have. And, I think he will fit well over there, especially if they do re-sign Kyrie Irving. I think they're going to be able to fit very well with the pieces that they have. And they become that much better to me of a defensive team than they already were because of these moves. Rashawn Holmes is a defensive presence. That's big time. And, you know, they were able to make it work. So for me, that was really one of the biggest winners of the draft. And obviously Oklahoma City Thunder was for me too. They made some, being part of that, getting David Bertans, and I forgot exactly who they drafted from that trade.
Case and Wallace.
Yep, Case
and that's where they got
Wallace.
the number 10 pick, because they made that trade with Dallas, and then Dallas moved down to 12 to get Derek Lively. Right. And I don't think that was a secret. I think a lot of people in the hours prior to the draft knew that Derek Lively was going to Dallas, and he was even talking a lot about Dallas in interviews that he did leading up to the draft and how much he liked it and thought he would be able to fit down there beside Luka Doncic and serve as a defensive anchor, which we know the Mavericks desperately need in the interior.
Most definitely. The Thunder just continue to get richer and richer. And as they continue to build, they still got a boatload of draft capital to use. They're still rebuilding, but the process is going to rebuilding is going to go that much further, not just because of the picks and because of the fact you got SGA and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that's growing, along with Josh Christopher and Josh Gidley down there. But you still got Chet Holmgren coming back healthy. He missed all of last season. He's going to be back this year. You putting him as one of the anchors of your defense and staple component of your offense in the way that we know he could score. It just gets better and better going on over there. It's this rebuilding process that they're going through within the past couple of years has been very encouraging in Oklahoma City. Sam Presti's looking like a genius over there, and they're building a culture where even with the young talent, no matter what the talent is, they're making it work and they're winning basketball. They're being competitive with it in the league. So I think obviously they're in the right direction, and this draft pushed them that much further in that right direction, especially when you get the healthy pieces like Chet Holmgren to come back next season and compete. They're in a good position. They've always been in a good position moving forward, but they really are now.
So you say OKC, Dallas were the biggest winners of the draft. Of course, you said the Spurs. I don't think anybody disagreed with you there, because they got the number 1 overall pick and the guy that's considered to be a generational talent in Wembanyama. You said the Hornets, and you said the Blazers. Who would you say were the biggest losers from draft night?
Oh man, well, of course it's Chicago. It's the Bulls.
We gonna get into them later. They made a trade to get up in the draft, and we're gonna talk about that. I think they was the biggest loser from the draft lottery, and they sure as hell was the biggest loser at the draft, because it was kind of hard watching the draft and looking at all this talent, even though it was very star heavy at the top. I could see a lot of guys in this draft being like key role players on championship teams, contending teams in the league soon, if not immediately. And for the Bulls not to be able to get some of these guys, it's like, damn.
How
you gonna find a way to come up and turn the madhouse on Madison back to what it used to be? I don't know how you do it.
Exactly. That's why I'm giving it off to you. That's my biggest loser. I ain't got nobody else for you. You just go.
I got you.
You just go ahead.
Yeah, for me, Dallas, I love what they did. I love what they did a lot, because I think they solidified their defense with some youth and athleticism. And a guy like Derek Lively, he was inconsistent through certain stretches at Duke to me, but defensively, he showed that he could be an anchor, and that's what they need. And I'm interested to see how he's gonna work in a pick and roll game with Luka, because I've always wanted to see Luka with a dynamic big that was long, who could hold they in as a rim runner, as well as a presence defensively at the rim. And Derek Lively, I like that pick a lot for him. And Rashawn Holmes, a veteran who I think needed a new change of scenery. I like that as well. I think he could be a guy that is more than likely going to be their Christian Wood replacement, where he's coming off the bench. If Derek Lively isn't, you probably might see him starting at times. alongside of Luka Doncic. I've been waiting for Rashawn Holmes to get on another team with a dynamic ball handler that could set him up well. Olivier Maxence Prosper, you know, you talk about him and how he's developed as a shooter. You talking about a guy who went from shooting 16.7% from three-point land his first year in the ACC with Clemson, transfers to Marquette 2 years later. He's shooting nearly 34% from beyond the arc at the college level. If he could translate that to the NBA level with his defense, I could see him taking that Dorian Finney-Smith role for Dallas and being real nice. And Nico Harrison done put together some solid drafts the last couple years. Because you talk about how Olivier Maxence Prosper can make Tim Hardaway Jr. expendable. I think a guy like Jaden Hardy can as well, who had some flashes last year after coming up from the G League with the Legends, the Mavs G League affiliate. But the one of the teams that won to me, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it, is the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers, man, they came into the draft. They was looking for a power forward that could run the floor, who could help Tyrese Halliburton in the pick and roll game, rebound, protect the rim, switch on the smaller guards and defend and do a whole bunch of useful stuff without having to be a focal point in the offense. They got that guy. His name is Jarris Walker. And I think he checks all those boxes, and taking him there and being able to grab a pair of second round picks from the Wizards just to go back one spot, that's a huge win. And he talks about Jarris Walker. He was talking about how he watches a lot of Jaylen Brown and Kevin Durant, Drew Holiday, and how he wants to like copy the blueprint of a lot of two-way versatile players in the league that could do a series of things on the floor. That's the type of player that the Pacers need, and I believe that they got that. And then you add him what they already have over there, Miles Turner, a Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard, and Aaron Nesmith. They got a young core of talent, and they got some shooters over there as well, man. And I like the other pick that they made, getting Ben Shepherd out of Belmont, man. That was a dude that can light it up and defend as well. The Pacers are going in the right direction. So to me, the Pacers, I say the Pacers, the Mavericks, OKC, can't go wrong with OKC. I like the fact that they got several guards now that can handle the ball and are able to play multiple positions. And they can also not only handle the ball, they can play without the ball. That's going to be a plus, especially when you got a guy like Jalen Williams over there as well, who was an all-rookie first-team guy. Could have easily been a guy that was considered by many as a Rookie of the Year selection. But as far as losers go, I think the biggest loser of draft night might have been Damian Lillard.
Oh,
The only reason why I say that is because anytime your team drafts a young guard, a guy that played the same position as you, with a top 3 pick, and they and with a top 3 pick, and they find a way to draft your replacement, like it's nothing you could do. I don't see the Portland Trailblazers trading Scoot Henderson. And if they're gonna try to compete in the way in which Damian Lillard wants to compete, I think their road has become a little bit tougher. So I think he was the biggest loser, and it's to be continued with what happens. But in my opinion, he got a decision to make. And I think it's gonna be the decision that he don't want to make. But that's what we call hard decisions in life. It's decisions you don't want to make, but you gotta make. I think it's time to go.
Yep, you can play that Boys to Man end of the road. It's coming. It's coming, man.
Oh yeah.
It's definitely coming. And that's honestly, that's the first thought that came to my mind when they drafted Scoot. They didn't trade him. They got Scoot. Scoot is literally viewed as a franchise-changing player. That's a point guard. Damian Lillard understand what that looks like because he was the top 6 pick. They got drafted by Portland and changed the game and became the man and turned Portland to what it is now. So if he knows that, oh yeah, he's been trolling these past few days since the draft. Tom's pretty much letting people know where he really want to go.
And I understand. I want that for him.
Yeah.
I want that for him.
Most definitely. And so I think it's time. It's time. Go ahead to the 305, bro. Don't
Yep.
go ahead to the 305. Jimmy Butler will be there waiting there with Taylor Swift. Rick Ross will be there on the other side with UD. They're gonna make this work. So come on.
Yeah, hopefully they got enough assets. That's always been the thing with Miami. Miami actually had a good draft as well, drafting Jaime Jaquez. That's a guy that really fit what they trying to do. And just looking at his tape and his game in isolation, it's kind of Jimmy Butler-esque at times. I'm not going to compare him fully to Jimmy Butler. He has a long way to go, but I think he fits in to what they trying to do over there and is a hard-nosed defender and was a solid player at UCLA throughout his career in Westwood. So I like that as well. But yeah, like we know what move they really trying to make. But let's get into the Bulls. They acquired the number 35th pick from the Wizards during the latter part of Thursday evening, and they selected Tennessee forward Julian Phillips in the second round. I know, Josh, that you were on hand at the Advocate Center hearing the thoughts of Arturas Karnisovas, president of basketball operations for the Chicago Bulls, alongside of general manager Mark Eversley, following this selection that they made. What's your overall thoughts on this move? I don't really know much about him. Seen a little bit of tape. Kind of has a Derrick Jones Jr. build, but I know they say he's a high level defender, but still needs work when it comes to his jump shot. Something that I think a lot of players on this Bulls roster need, and that's why they brought in a high level shooting coach to try and help them with that. But what's your thoughts overall on Julian Phillips and the direction that the Bulls are trying to go in after hearing what you heard on Thursday night?
You mentioned the guy's name, Derrick Jones Jr. That's his replacement. Like they made it known that Derrick Jones Jr.'s decision to opt out of his deal when it was expected for him to opt in, changed things for them a little bit, and they said that they wanted to get someone that can resemble that. But let's be very serious. They have a prototype. They have a certain type of player that they like. The player has to be versatile, got to be able to play defend all positions on the court, and you can plug them in offensively and they can pretty much play wherever they can on offensive end. Positionless basketball per se. But that's not the Bulls' problem. They have versatile players. Their problem is they can't shoot for a lick. And you did not do anything in this draft to change that at all. Now they vouch that they're going to do it in free agency, but it's like, okay, how you going to do that when you ain't got no bread to get nobody? You already vouched to, pay everybody else, bring pretty much overall half of the team back. You gotta sacrifice a lot to get a lot of these shooters in this offseason. Because a lot of these players deserve the bag, especially when you talk about Miami. They got players that are going to be free agency. That's going to ask about at least 10 to 12 mil every year that you don't have money to pay unless you remove yourself from some people. So it didn't make sense. It made sense, but it didn't make sense to me because not only did you trade into the draft to get him, you traded 2 second-round picks to get a second-round pick. Like, make that make sense for me. Like, make that make sense. It doesn't make sense at all that you gave up more to get something that you wanted. And I shook my head so much when this pick went down because it doesn't benefit but it doesn't benefit them for the right now. The Bulls are operating like they have time for a rebuild. They have time to develop players and time to win. When the reality is, you got DeMar DeRozan who's going into his mid-30s. You have Vucevic that's going into his mid-30s. You trying to keep these players on your roster that are in win now mode. You don't have time to wait. And they're operating in a way like they do have time to wait. And they already mentioned they got the green light to move however the way they want to move. So if they want to slow it down and and waste time, Jerry's okay with it. Like, it doesn't make sense with the way they're operating in comparison to where they are with the reality. And it shows that they want certain types of players and they want to work on developing those players for the cheap. And on top of that, let's not act like Phillips is going to be getting a lot of playing time. He's not. It's not like he's going to be a starter. He's going to get a lot of time to develop. Patrick Williams started for half of the season, and it took him a while just to get to where he's at now. So it's like, what are you really doing? This move was a Dalen Terry-esque type of move. You bring him in. No one really heard of this guy much. I mean, yes, he has defensive presence. He's a good defensive player. He has a 43-inch vertical, which was the highest in the NBA draft at the combine.
Okay.
And so we did see that and witness that, this nasty bounce. But still, how does that benefit the Bulls right now? When you talk about the players that you have, the time that you have, and the fact that you gave up so much to even get into this position. How does this benefit you right now? It doesn't. So because of that, the Bulls did themselves a disservice by trading for a player they're not going to play right away. They want to spend a lot of time to develop. You traded more, you paid more for the guy than you could have probably if you went anywhere else. And you still have issues with lack of big men depth and 3-point shooting. And point guard. You got no point guard.
Yeah, that was the number one question in the house at the Advocate Center. And they did clear up that they don't expect Lonzo Ball to play over the course of the 23-24 NBA season. I was glad that they cleared that up. That's actually the first time I've heard Arturis and Mark actually say that on the record. So that was good that the reporters on hand thought enough to ask that question that I think so many Bulls supporters and fans alike and people in this city who follow the team wanted to know. The thing I find kind of funny about it is you traded into the draft and Imani Bates was on the board. You know, you didn't want to take a flyer. I just, and then the funny thing about it, you didn't want to take a flyer, but Cleveland did.
Right.
And I hope it works out for him there. I do. I know he was a guy that for many years was linked to Chet Holmgren at the prep level, is one of the top players in the United States, and rightfully so. If you've seen the tape, you've seen the tape. We know what all he's been through. We wish him nothing but the best and success at the NBA level, and not only at the NBA level in his life period, no matter how his career unfolds. But like, man, like you had a shot, but I don't know what the Bulls are doing right now, man. I don't. That's why I had to ask you. But yeah, I mean, they definitely do have a type. I agree. And it was a very Bulls-esque move. Like last year when they drafted Dalen Terry, I had to get on my phone right away and look up highlights on Dalen Terry, even though I watched Arizona last year in the tournament with Benedict Mathurin prior to him being a lottery selection by the Pacers. Like Julian Phillips, I got to do some homework on him. I see the athletic ability through the highlight tape and whatnot. I see his potential defensively. But you're right, they do have a type. And the one thing that's included in that type are guys that can shoot. And I hope they're ready to really have these young guys put in the work that they need to in order to do whatever it takes to be quality players at the NBA level. But I want to move on from that and ask you your thoughts as to whether or not you're buying or selling some of the latest post NBA draft trade rumors on the eve of free agency opening up later this week that have surfaced across the internet. We know about Zion Williamson, the New Orleans Pelicans. If I ask you, are you buying or selling the fact that the Pelicans never offered Zion Williamson in any trade discussions, what will your response be?
Selling. I think they did. Now, I don't think it was going to be that easy to just let him go. I don't think they were just going to just give him up, in any of the trade discussions. But you can't sit here and tell me that over the past few years, Zion Williamson has yet to play over 35, 40 games in a season. He hasn't been on the court, always been hurt. He's had issues with Pelicans staff, more specifically the medical staff, as well as the front office. He doesn't have a relationship with any of the players like that. So chemistry's off. And he's been in the news recently for not playing on the court, but playing in the bedroom. I mean, you sitting here telling me that you're not gonna pick up the phone and be like, look, if you want this guy, I will think about allowing you to have him. Yeah, I would too. Now, I'm not gonna say I would get rid of him automatically, but you can't sit here and tell me they didn't think about any trade offers, especially with the way the Pelicans were moving to go top 3 to get a game changer like a Brandon Miller or a Scoot Henderson. Because I need a point guard, and because they definitely need a point guard in New Orleans. So I know they could at least go for Scoot. I mean, come on. What? I'm not gonna be naive and sit here and say, "Oh, Zion was completely off limits." No, that brother was available. They may not have pulled the trigger, but I'm positive that they at least listened to some offers for him, because there's too much surrounding Zion that isn't always positive with what has transpired within his tenure so far in New Orleans. Some of it is his fault, some of it isn't. But you can't sit here and tell me that he was completely off limits because of everything that has transpired, especially recently. And this was really one of the top drafts in a while where you had that much of quality talent. Well, in your top 40, you could have potentially traded into. Yeah, I'm not buying that.
I'm going to buy it, but I think it can change as the offseason goes along. I don't think this is the first time or the last time that you're going to hear Zion Williamson's name in trade reports or trade rumors, as long as he continues to be in and out of lineups on a consistent basis. A trend that we've seen through his first few years in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll buy that they didn't offer him up. I think it was a lot of smoke, to be honest. And, dog days of the off season, people got to have something to talk about, right?
Right.
So I'll buy it, but I think it can easily change. And if it changes, then it's something that I think is worth us monitoring at a high level, because as we know, from mid-July to August, there will be a lot of trades getting done. And that could be said no matter what happens on the free agency market involving the likes of Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Chris Middleton, among other top tier free agents in this year's class. But I'm going to move on to the next one. The Knicks and Clippers talking on a potential deal involving Paul George. Are you buying that or are you selling that?
I'm buying it. I think the Clippers are slowly but surely getting that much more impatient with this Kawhi and Paul George duo. And they're willing to let Paul George go instead of Kawhi because they know Kawhi's value because of his injury history and the type of injuries he's had he may not get the most value back. He hasn't been the most durable, but he's also the most impactful. So out of the duo. So you don't want to necessarily just give him up for less than what the true worth really is. Because when in Paul George's situation, you can get a pretty decent haul back still. And it's just funny how this came out after Paul George had Jerry West on his podcast.
Yeah, I saw that clip. I gotta listen to Paul George podcast. It seems like a very interesting podcast. I gotta listen to that full interview with Jerry West. He ain't hold nothing back.
No, he didn't hold anything back at all. And one of the things he held back was the fact. One of the things he was very vocal about was he hates that fate didn't allow Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to thrive in the way that they could have been thriving together because of the injuries. But he definitely said that he did, but he made it clear, like, this is the best duo you're going to get. Like, he pretty much vouched for them. And need to remind you, Jerry West is in the front office as an advisor to the Clippers.
Right.
So because of this, and knowing that Jerry West is the savant that he is from a front office perspective, the resume speaks for itself. I can't sit here and see that it was him initiating these conversations. I'm pretty sure it's Lawrence Frank. I'm pretty sure it's the others in that front office that's really putting it out there to say, we're not really trying to trade Paul George, but they have one more year left together on their contracts. If things go south, they don't want to lose them for nothing, especially when they got this new arena coming in after next year. So I think I can buy that. I can definitely see them doing it. I don't think it's Jerry West per se that really wants to do it. I don't even think Steve Ballmer necessarily wants to do it. But I think they're doing their due diligence to let it be known, like, this is running its course if you don't get it, if y'all don't get it together. And we're putting it out there just in case, let teams know that this is what we're thinking.
See, this is a two-parter for me.
Mm-hmm.
I buy the Clippers talking on a potential deal involving Paul George with the Knicks. Oh, I buy that 100%. I understand the reasons. A lot of the ones you hit on. But I sell the Knicks actually taking that to heart. And I tell you why, because the Knicks know as much as they do need to go star shopping for a floor space and wing, and after failing to land Donovan Mitchell last offseason in the wake of a playoff run they just went on where they shot under 30% from three, they know that they need a player of that caliber. But this is what the issue is. As much as he would be an ideal fit for the Knicks and joining that lineup with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle to possibly form a big three over there, he's played in 108 like total playoff games across 10 postseason runs as well. But like his injury history, why am I going to take that chance? And then it's talks, as I'm reading this on Bleach Report talking about it, where they were saying that the Knicks have become hesitant about acquiring George because the Knicks also think that George's representatives will ask for a contract extension, and he's due to earn $45.6 million next season and $48.8 million the following season if he exercises his player option. Now, don't you think if he go to New York, he's more than likely going to want to seek to sign a fat extension that could be worth well over $200 million? And that's a very high price to pay if you're going to trade for Paul George, who's 33 years old, and he hasn't played 56 games or more in any of his 4 seasons with the Clippers. The only way the Knicks going to pursue that, in my eyes, is if it's a fair asking price. And if the team is at least comfortable paying him not only this year, but the next year. Because otherwise, it don't make no sense. You're not going to give up players that you just developed, like Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly, just for that. If Leon Rose did that, they operating like the old days. Mm-hmm. And that's what put the Knicks in the hellhole in the first place. Like I said, I buy that the Clippers are making those calls. I sell it ever getting done. And I think it won't get done because of his durability concerns and his contract. It's just that simple. I don't see that getting done. So I sell the fact that the Knicks are interested. But yeah, the Clippers are buying that. But my next question for you is with the Houston Rockets. The Rockets are a real threat to sign free agent center Brook Lopez of the Milwaukee Bucks. Are you buying that or are you selling it?
I'm selling that. When you have been accustomed to not only playing with one of the best players in the world in Giannis, but you also won with him, and you had some of your best years in that system, you are going to want to come back and win. At least that's what the thought process should be. So Houston's not in a winning state in any shape or form. They're in rebuild mode. The only way I would consider it maybe is if you were to get a James Harden or a top tier player like that to come over and you got him long term, then yeah, maybe. But for Brook Lopez to abandon championship culture to go to a young rebuild in Houston, I don't see that taking place at all. And it wouldn't make sense for him to do that, knowing that he can still play at a pretty good level of winning. I mean, he was considered last year as the defensive player of the year candidate. That's something that he might not get. He's not going to get really in Houston. He's better off in a winning culture, championship culture, and environment. So, no, I'm selling that.
See, just like the last one, this is a two-parter for me. I buy him actually taking a meeting with Houston. I buy Houston being a real threat because Houston got money to spend. They could offer him 3 years, $75 million. But I can't see him, as you alluded to, signing with them, because in order for him to sign with them, it requires him to leave a team that's in the hunt for a championship every year with Giannis to go to a team that's not only likely to miss the playoffs again, but a team that's going to be relying on him to do so much, not only on the floor, but off the floor when it comes to teaching these guys how to succeed, not only on the court, but off the court as professionals in this league. So I don't see it, but the Bucks are in a tough spot when it comes to salary. They owe $115 million to just 6 players. And this is when you consider, like, think about it, they got a lot of free agents: Chris Middleton, Jay Crowder, Joe Ingles. Javon Carter can turn down $2.2 million this year on a player option to enter the free agency market as well. So if he does that, you know, they gonna have to figure out how to make things work. But like I said, I buy them being a threat, but I don't think there's such a threat to the point where he's gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna go to Houston. If he was to go to Houston, he has to go to Houston with another vet beside him and maybe another all-star. And we talk about a team going from the lottery to trying to go at least top 4 or 5 in the West. Otherwise, I don't see what the purpose of him going to H-Town would be, unless if it's to go and play with some vets and try and win. I think he is in a better situation in Milwaukee, and I think that's more than likely where he'll stay. The next one is the Cavaliers turning down offers for Jared Allen. Are you buying that? Or are you selling it?
I'm buying it. Jared Allen is a focal point of this core, this young nucleus and core that's happening in Cleveland. And, you know, his defensive presence is substantial when you talk about pairing it with Evan Mosley. The Cleveland Cavaliers know that. That's why they have him there for the long term to pair up with Evan. And, you know, he's still young. So he's still, you know, figuring out his way to land, especially offensively. But he brings you so much defensively to that team that you let that go. You better be able to find a person or a top tier quality player that can actually fill that void, which is very hard to find in today's league. So I think, yeah, it would be smart for them not to even think about offers like that, unless there's literally some other all-star players involved. And I think that's what Cleveland is pretty much doing. So yeah, I'm buying it.
I'm selling that they turning down offers in regards to maybe trading Jared Allen for an all-star wing. But I'm buying it that they're turning down some of these offers, such as the ones that they got from Philadelphia. Yeah, they turning that down. I don't see them being quick to trade Jared Allen just to get Tobias Harris.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to put an all-star wing on the table, I think they raised their antennas a little bit. So I'll sell that the Cavs are turning, or I'll buy that they're turning down offers for Jared Allen that are like typical offers. But if it's for a wing that can help alleviate pressure off of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, yeah, I could see them being interested in that, especially when they got a big man in Evan Mobley, who at some point they're going to have to cash out as he continues to grow and ascend in this league. My last one, the Blazers showing no interest in trading away their number 3 overall pick, Scoot Henderson. Are you buying that rumor or are you selling it?
I'm selling it. That, to be honest with you, it wouldn't be smart to do. That is literally your franchise player who has the capabilities of being literally a transcendent generational talent. So you're literally forfeiting your future when you trade him to keep Dame happy. At this point, you're not going to find another draft that equates to what Scoot Henderson does and brings to the table. You're just not, at least not for a while. So your best bet is to keep what you got and say, Dame, it's been some decade. It's been a little over a decade. You've been great to us, but we just can't put around you what you desire. It's time for us to move in a different direction. We got a young head coach that can support this direction. It's time to make that move. I apologize. We'll trade you to wherever you want to go. We'll get the most we can out of it, but we'll trade you wherever you want to go. You just let us know. It's time for that. It's time for that move to take place, and it's the best decision for Portland right now. So no, I'm buying that they're not trading Scoot Henderson.
I'm buying that Henderson is safe for sure. I don't see them trading away Scoot Henderson. But if Damian Lillard decides to stay and Simons, Shaden Sharp, might want to get on the phone with your agents because you could be dealt. I'm just saying, if Damian Lillard decides to stay, there's no way in hell all 3 of them guards staying there. But I do think Scoot's spot is safe in the Pacific Northwest. I think he's going to be there for quite a while. But moving on from buying or selling the latest post-NBA draft trade rumors on the eve of free agency to discussing the latest with DeAndre Ayton, who, according to Bleacher Report's Chris Haynes, has indicated that the Phoenix Suns intend to keep him going into the 23-24 season. What are your thoughts on that news after the earlier part of last weekend in which DeAndre Ayton was being rumored to be in trades going to Philadelphia?
It's a two-part for me. It's good, but it's bad. It's good because, like you mentioned before, Frank Vogel knows how to win with big men. That's what he's good at. He's always won and had deep playoff runs with solidified big men. And DeAndre Ayton is a solidified big man in this world. I mean, in this league. So it makes sense that you want to try to work with him. Problem is, I don't think it's going to pan out well, because the key to the big men that he works with and has worked with is an offensive system that now is a system that allowed them to thrive defensively, but had their shine offensively. We talk about the Anthony Davises of the world, even going back to Roy Hibbert in Indiana. He was a defensive presence, but he had offensive skills too that was able to flow within the offense that Paul George and Danny Granger at the time was running. This offense is so stacked that DeAndre Ayton ain't gonna get that ball, especially as much as he wants it from a times touches perspective. That ain't gonna happen. So he's gonna be useless kind of offensively, and you already know what that looks like when he doesn't get what he wants. The chemistry gets bad. It gets toxic. He needs a new situation to where he can thrive on both ends of the floor. And for for Phoenix to keep him, I see what they're trying to do, and quite frankly, it makes sense to do it. But I don't think it will work because of the fact that with his skill set, it's going to clash with 3 other scorers on your team that are the top 5, 6, 7 scorers in the league. and potentially top 20 players in the league. It's just not going to work that way. If it didn't work with someone that could facilitate the ball and Chris Paul to get DeAndre Ayton where he needed to be to help to create opportunities for him to score, what makes you think Bradley Beal's going to do that? I mean, he can do that, but it's not that ideal. It's not that much of a shoo-in or guarantee that will take place. So I don't think it's a smart move for Phoenix to do, but because Frank Vogel, the head coach, a lot of his winning has been equated to perimeter scoring on top of a solid big man, I can see why he's saying.
I'm just interested to see how it's going to work. If DeAndre Ayton is willing to be a selfless individual who buys in to being the best defensive big man that he could potentially be in Frank Vogel's system, I think it has a great chance of working. But in order for him to do that, he got to understand something that you said, that I'm not going to get as many touches as I want. As long as him and Frank Vogel have a mutual understanding, I'm a just watch it in good faith. If they don't have that understanding, it's going to show. And when it shows, I don't think that James Jones is going to have a choice at all in the matter but to trade him if it does not work. So I'm cool with giving him a clean slate, especially with this coach and Frank Vogel, who, as we know, big men are truly important to his success and in his system. And I do believe that he will seek to utilize him as best as he can, even on the offensive end. But look, you the fourth option on the team, bro. And unless two of these stars are out on a given night, you may not get a high volume of touches. It's that simple. But moving on to Chris Middleton, who declined his player option to enter free agency. Outside of Milwaukee, what would you say are the top landing spots for the All-Star wing? I really can't see him leaving Milwaukee, but you never know.
See, I struggle with this. I really do. Because like you said, I don't see him leaving Milwaukee. I just don't. The system fits him perfectly, and he's going to get the most bread out of it. It just doesn't make sense. But the more I think about it, and we just got done talking about Brook Lopez, I can see maybe Houston being a destination. And if he goes to Houston, that might intrigue Brook Lopez that much more to go to Houston.
That's a good point, yeah.
And I think that could be something that you can raise your eyebrows and say, okay, Ime, I see what you're up to. Because as much offensive firepower that young squad does have, they don't have the veteran presence that they need from that perimeter perspective in a league where it's a perimeter 3-and-D league. He fits that void from a veteran perspective. And since he played with Brook Lopez for all this time in Milwaukee, if you lure him over to Houston as well, you got your wing and big man now. You got your starting wingman and big man. All you really need is a point guard. And I think if you get them two over there, you already talked about James Harden having been distraught about which direction to go and him leaning more significantly now to Philly because of Nick Nurse and everything. And that's probably the best chance to win. But if you're telling me you can get Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez, who are players that he can probably ball with over there, along with this young core, why not? Why not consider going there and getting me a decent contract where I can play with Ime Udoka and then your sidekick is a Chris Middleton who has pretty good potential, top tier scoring ability and defensive ability as long as he can stay healthy. And you got Brook Lopez, who he ain't Joel Embiid, but dude balled out shooting over 35% from three and was a rebounding presence and a defensive presence because he was considered a defensive player of the year candidate. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it can intrigue the possibilities. And that could be something that Houston could really go after if they were to fall in that realm. So But Chris Middleton for sure could be the first domino that has to take place. And I would not be surprised, maybe if he was to go to Houston, a couple of people that may be willing to go play with him, especially when you talk about Brook Lopez and the rumors behind Brook, the connection of Brook Lopez to Houston already as is.
It took me a minute to think about spots outside of Milwaukee because I've been so used to seeing Chris Middleton in Milwaukee. And he's been there for the majority of his career ever since Detroit gave him up for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's two teams in the same division as the Rockets out in the Southwest that I do think he could fit well on. You say Houston, I'm going to bring a team in Texas into it, and that's the Dallas Mavericks. I think he could really fit well there.
Yeah.
He could take a lot of pressure off of Luka Doncic when it comes to scoring if he could stay healthy. He could be a solid do-it-all type of role player for this franchise that they desperately need. And if he was able to go over there with Kyrie returning, they would be a very intriguing watch in the West. Another team is the Memphis Grizzlies. You talk about a team that could use his services not only on the floor at the wing and being a third option beside Desmond Bane and Ja Morant once he returns from his 25-game suspension, but he could also be an invaluable locker room leader, a guy that really shows some of these guys how to be a true professional. And if Chris Middleton was to lead Milwaukee, I would love to see him in Memphis because I think he could be that type of vet that these guys need. And he may not be the number 2 option anymore. It was a time in my life where I thought Chris Middleton was one of the top 10 number 2 options in the league. It might be time to just take a step back and be a number 3 option. And you still on a damn good team in Memphis that could easily make a run. And they need a vet. They need a vet. And if they are hell-bent on parting with Dylan Brooks, why not go after a guy like Chris Middleton if you could get him at a reasonable price tag and his medical records check out and he's fully healthy and ready to go, because he could be a massive spark to this team. And you add him with what they're already able to do defensively with Jaren Jackson Jr. should he find a way to, avoid foul trouble consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that would be a nice environment for him. And I think he can make a big impact over there, man, on and off the floor, and be a vet that a lot of them guys will appreciate down the road, no matter how long he played there, and helping them with their growth and development.
Those are definitely some top tier teams. And they're also going to make it easier for Dallas to get rid of Tim Hardaway Jr. too.
Oh, yeah.
To get some good value off of him in comparison with the draft picks they already got. I can definitely see Dallas and Memphis for sure. Those are very good options, very solid options. I just hope that if they were to consider him, they'll have the money to give him and what he's seeking, because he's definitely seeking some type of max contract, whether it's a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year. It don't matter. They wants max money. That's for sure. So it'll be interesting to see if those teams can offer that and are willing to offer him that. But those are all great options for sure.
Yeah, but that concludes this week's edition of Open Run. Make sure you can check out all the War Media shows on YouTube channel. Check out the Substack page. You can also check out the latest edition of the At Bat podcast on the YouTube channel, as well as all podcast platforms, where you might see a special face alongside of Saul Rodriguez and Miles Porter talking about the stellar play of Luis Robert, who's one of the top sluggers in the American League. Actually just hit his 22nd home run as of this recording. Kind of the reason why I got tongue-tied a little bit while I was talking with Josh and I was watching it in the background. Check that out. For myself, Gabriel Wilkins, my man Josh Hicks, so long, everybody.